generation. David Crosby's music's reached several generations with his music. He died yesterday. He was 81 years old. Joining us now to talk more about the two-time Rock Hall of Famer is former Rolling Stones reporter and Bay Area local Ben Fong-Torres. Ben, I think that a lot of people, when they think of David Crosby, might think of him, especially recently, as that ornery old guy with the beanie who was on Twitter, saying stuff, right? But he really is, if you've been around for a long time, he really is one of the people who pioneered that sound.
Hi, Sal. Yes, he had been outspoken for many years, long before he started wearing a beanie. And in fact, I go back to being a fan of the Byrds in the mid-'60s and then meeting David in early 1969 after he had formed the band Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And that was after he had been fired by the Byrds for being so outspoken on stage as well as off stage and his music. So, with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, they created the first so-called supergroup. Blind Faith was around, but Crosby, Stills, and Nash were probably the major rock force of its time. And Crosby was right in the middle of it with his harmonizing vocals and his disharmonizing politics that he was not shy to take onto the stage.
Yeah, you see, the 1960s, music was, I think, in my opinion, a lot more central to society than it is now. Music is always important, but in that era, can you try to describe for us why his music and also his music and also the music of his group and all music in that era was just a little bit bigger because, people didn't have all these other sources of entertainment, video games. It was just really music on the radio.
Yeah, it was music on the radio. Originally, it was kind of top 40 pop music. And then it got more serious with the arrivals of the Beatles and the Bob Dylan and his protest and so-called message songs. Everybody basically got more mature in the rock music, including bands out in San Francisco. Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, Big Brother, Country Joe, Creedence. They all had things to say as well as things to sing. And it galvanized a changing, growing countercultural generation, many of them countercultural. And so they had the music to be sort of their soundtrack of what they were going through. And it helped to create a stronger community, of one that was based on fun and entertainment. That's what rock and roll really is about. But because of the Dylan, the Beatles, the Stones, and then later on, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and other bands like them, music carried more weight than it had in previous years. That's the cover of Rolling Stone, by the way, that I did the interview with David over several stretches in 1970, and there we are now together on his boat or schooner called the Mayan in Southern California.
That's a great picture, Ben, of you and younger David Crosby. There's one thing I do want to ask you about before we go, because we could talk for a long time, but I have time for one more question, and that is, he had a hard life. He was arrested for drug possession. He was doing a lot of the things that rock stars in that era did. And he came back, he says he's lucky to be alive as an older man. What do you think he took away from that hard life? And considering that he had such a hard life, he lived to 81 years old. I mean, that's an accomplishment, right?
Well, it's a shock, frankly. In 1988, he told his story in book form. I think a lot of his fans back then were saying, what? He's still alive? But he worked out a balance to all of his excesses, and he had a lot of downs as well as a lot of highs. In the end, he came back to the music and family, and he and his son were part of a band that continued to perform and record up until his passing. So the music never stopped for him.
Ben, I would say that he is rock royalty, and after looking at you and remembering what you've done as a reporter, you are too. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for giving us a little bit more on David Crosby this morning.
Thank you, Sal.